The gravel crackled under Dominic Vasquez's tires as his truck rolled past the weather-beaten "Welcome to Pine Hollow" sign. The countryside looked familiar but haunted, like a memory left too long in the sun. Fields that once bloomed wild, with sunflowers were now strangled by symmetry. Ornamental fences, mulch beds, and sterile landscaping. Pine Hollow had changed, but not in a way that honored its roots. He crested the hill and spotted it, his family's land, 14 acres of sun-drenched Texas prairie, scattered with ancient oaks and split-rail fencing that had stood for generations. He slowed, heart tightening at the sight of his late grandfather's red barn, its faded paint peeling like old skin. But something was wrong. The entrance gate was new, fresh black iron with decorative spirals, and it was locked. And worse, affixed to it was a bright plastic sign. Private property. Few rules enforced. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Dominic's brow furrowed. What ho! His boots hit the ground before the dust settled. He walked the perimeter, noting solar path lights, lawn gnomes, and a neatly manicured flower bed planted in a perfect semicircle. None of this belonged. None of this had been approved by his family. The whole place looked like it had been colonized by Pinterest. That's when she appeared. From a golf cart emblazoned with Pine Hollow Estates Community Patrol, a woman emerged like a storm in a sun hat. Karen Malone, short-statured but radiating entitlement like heat off the asphalt. She wore a lemon-yellow reflective vest, a walkie-talkie clipped to her waist, and a clipboard she wielded like a badge. "You there!" she barked, squinting through oversized sunglasses. "You're trespassing. This land is part of Pine Hollow Estates. Turn around and leave immediately or I'll have you arrested." Dominic blinked. "Trespassing? Ma'am, I own this land," she scoffed. "That's impossible. The community owns this plot now. It was declared green space by the HOA last year. We've invested in beautification. You have no right to be here." "I think there's been a mistake," Dominic said calmly, pulling out his wallet and retrieving a Texas ID with a QR code. "Scan this. It'll link you to the county registry. I'm the legal owner. This land's been in my family for over 70 years. Karen didn't even glance at it. "Fake IDs won't get you out of trouble," she said, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff." Within 15 minutes, 2 county deputies arrived. Young, clean-cut, and clearly used to calls from Pine Hollow. They approached cautiously. Karen ran to them like a quarterback spiking the ball. "He's trying to squat on our greenbelt," she shrieked. "Threatened me. Said he's taking over the property." One deputy turned to Dominic, hand resting near his belt. "Sir, do you have any ID or proof of ownership?" Dominic didn't flinch. He pulled out the QR code again. "Scan it. It links to the official Travis County Records site. My name is Dominic Vasquez. The deed was transferred to me after my father passed last year. It's legal. It's on file. Check it." The deputy did. His phone dinged and his brows rose. "Yup. County records confirm it. Sole ownership, Dominic J. Vasquez." Karen's jaw dropped. "There must be some mistake," she said, voice cracking. The second officer looked at the sign on the gate. "Ma'am, this gate is illegal if it restricts access to private property. You'll need to remove it immediately, unless you can prove the HOA legally annexed this land." Karen sputtered. But we filed an overlay claim. It's community-managed land." Dominic stepped forward. "No, it's my land, and I didn't authorize any overlay. I just got back from Europe. I was working restoration projects in Montenegro for the UN Environmental Alliance. Now I'm here to restore my family farm, and I don't appreciate being treated like a criminal on my own land." The officers turned to Karen. "Ma'am, unless you can provide documentation showing a legal transfer or easement, we can't stop him from accessing his property." She turned red. Not from heat, from indignation. Later that afternoon, Dominic parked near the side fence and walked the rest of the way in, stepping over cracked stone paths that hadn't been laid by his family. Even the barn had been tampered with, power cords running out to a decorative lantern post someone had installed without permission. A wind spinner, painted like a butterfly, spun slowly in the breeze above a small wooden plaque. Adopt a greenbelt. Pine Hollow HOA project. Dominic's jaw clenched. This wasn't beautification. This was invasion. Inside the barn, the scent of cedar and dust greeted him like an old friend. His grandfather's workbench was still there, sawdust still embedded in the cracks. But there were new additions, folding chairs stacked in the corner, laminated signs marked Community, Potluck and HOA Committee voting here. He pulled out his phone and began filming everything. By nightfall, Dominic stood on the front porch of a local diner in town, sipping black coffee and staring into the twilight. He remembered riding horses across those fields as a kid. The way, his grandfather would say, "Land don't belong to committees, son. It belongs to the people who love it." That land had been the only inheritance he had left. And somehow, while he was halfway across the world building eco-villages, someone had tried to steal it with paper trails and politics. He opened the browser on his phone and typed, Pine Hollow HOA. The search results were infuriating. A website, bright, cheerful, full of smiling faces, boasted of expanding green space. HOA-led revitalization and pending overlay claims on unused private lands. Unused, he had deeded ownership, and no one, not one person, had reached out to ask permission. Dominic's fingers flew across his phone. He emailed the county recorder's office, requesting all filed claims and overlays related to his property. He needed proof, on paper, that what they were doing wasn't just wrong, but illegal. An automated reply came through. Records request received. Estimated delivery, 2 business days. That would do. The next morning, Dominic returned with a bolt cutter and a laminated copy of the deed printed from the county website. He filmed himself as he approached the gate. This is Dominic Vasquez. Today is Wednesday, May 4th. This gate was illegally installed on my property without my consent. As the legal landowner of Parcel 17B in Pine Hollow County, I am removing this obstruction under Texas Penal Code, para 3005, with a sharp snap. The lock fell away. He pushed the gate open and stepped through. Not 10 minutes later, Karen's golf cart came screeching to a halt again. What do you think you're doing? That's destruction of HOA property. I'm reporting you. Dominic held up the laminated deed in one hand, the bolt cutter in the other. You are violating private property rights. I suggest you leave before you find yourself on the other end of a trespassing charge. She narrowed her eyes. You won't get away with this. The board will hear about it. He smiled. I'm counting on it. By late afternoon, Dominic was back at the barn, sorting through heirlooms, but his mind was already moving 5 steps ahead. Something told him this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Karen and her board had sunk their claws into the land, and they wouldn't back down easily. But Dominic wasn't just any landowner. He was a fighter, a conservationist, a man who had stood before foreign governments to protect sacred ground, and now he'd stand against a suburban HOA that thought laminated signs and sun hats gave them power. And this land wasn't a green belt, it was home. Dominic sat across from Marjorie Alton, a retired county clerk with sharp eyes and decades of knowledge etched into the lines of her face. She lived in a small ranch-style home just outside of Austin, nestled in the hills where the breeze still smelled like mesquite and freedom. He'd found her name after digging into Pine Hollow HOA filings. The overlay claims were oddly clean, too clean, and her signature appeared on the form as the verifying clerk, dated just 6 months prior. But according to county records, she'd retired more than a year before that. Mrs. Alton, Dominic began gently, sliding the document across the table. Can you confirm this signature? She squinted behind gold-rimmed glasses, then let out a low, bitter laugh. That's not mine, she said. That's a damn copy-paste forgery. My real signature isn't that clean. I had arthritis in my thumb. Look, here. She showed him her old ID badge. The difference was stark. Her genuine signature had a slight wobble, a natural imperfection. The document's version was too perfect, too smooth. Dominic's chest tightened. They forged your name. To push through a land overlay on my family's property? She nodded grimly. And if they forged mine, they probably forged the community approval signatures too. Check the surnames on the petition. I'll bet you anything those people either don't exist or they're all board members' cousins. Dominic flipped through the pages, 30 signatures. A few were scrawled Smith, Anderson, Reynolds, generic, suspiciously repetitive. One was listed as Todd Malone, Karen's husband. You think they did this to acquire land? He asked. Marjorie tapped the edge of the paper. Honey, they didn't want land. They wanted control. And now you've disrupted their fantasy. Be careful. HOA folks like that. Ones who break the law. They don't play fair. The harassment began that same week. First came the code. Violation notices. Yellow tags stapled to Dominic's newly installed farmhouse gate, claiming the property was non-compliant with Pine Hollow aesthetic standards. He peeled them off with disdain and mailed them to the county zoning board, who replied, "Your property is zoned agricultural exempt and not subject to HOA governance." Then came a visit from Child Protective Services. Dominic answered the door, too. Find a polite but serious-looking woman in a gray suit, holding a clipboard and a badge. Mr. Vasquez, we received an anonymous report claiming that a child has been seen on your property, unattended, possibly malnourished. May I speak with the child and see the living conditions? Dominic's blood ran cold. His daughter Izzy was staying with him for the summer, 11 years old, sharp as a tack, and just downstairs reading The Hobbit. He let the agent in, heart pounding. 10 minutes later, the woman stood in the kitchen, visibly annoyed. Your daughter's room is clean. She's polite, happy, clearly well cared for. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Unfortunately, we're required to follow up on all complaints. He nodded, jaw tight. You know this was a setup, right? Looked at him squarely. Off the record? Yeah. We've been getting a string of false reports from this zip code. All of them trace back to the same anonymous email domain, pinehollowwatchdogprotonmail.com. Dominic exhaled slowly. Karen. She wasn't just trying to scare him off, she was trying to ruin his life. If CPS had taken Izzy, even temporarily, it would have been devastating. But she'd miscalculated. Izzy was smart, brave, just like her mother. Dominic watched his daughter laughing in the other room, unaware of how close she'd come to being used as a weapon. He swore, then and there, he would burn Karen's empire down to the roots. That night, Dominic didn't sleep. Instead, he climbed the old oak tree behind the barn and mounted a motion-activated security camera with infrared vision. 2 more cameras went near the back pasture and a third over the porch, each fed to his laptop and an encrypted backup server. The next few nights were quiet. Then on the 4th night, 3:17 a.m., the alert pinged. Dominic bolted upright, grabbed his laptop and watched the footage. 2 shadows crept under the moonlight. HOA. Board members, their faces partially hidden by hoodies, but easily identifiable as Doug Linney and Stacy Pike, both listed on the forged overlay petition. Doug walked around the side of the barn carrying a plastic bag. Stacy knelt by the garden, bed, planting something behind the fence post. The next morning, Dominic investigated. Inside the dirt behind the fence post, he found a bag of syringes, half-empty bottles of vodka, and a Ziploc of crushed pills, clearly designed to resemble evidence of drug use. He filmed everything, every angle, every timestamp. Then he uploaded the footage to 3 different law firms, the local sheriff's office, and a private investigator who specialized in HOA fraud. Karen had just made her first irreversible mistake. The tip went viral fast. The footage, blurred for anonymity, was aired during a segment of 7 on Your Side Texas Truth Watch on KTXA, the local CBS affiliate. Tonight, we bring you a shocking case of possible HOA overreach in rural Travis County, where a returning landowner has allegedly been harassed, slandered, and framed by members of the Pine Hollow Estates Board. The anchor announced. They played snippets of Dominic's security footage, cut against B-roll of Karen barking orders during an HOA meeting. Karen, now visibly uncomfortable, declined to comment for the news team and slammed the door on their reporter. Dominic, however, spoke with quiet confidence. "I'm not against community beautification," he said on camera, standing in front of his barn. "But what's happening here is a theft, not just of land, but of legacy. They tried to erase my family with forged signatures and scare tactics, but I won't back down. I'm standing up for my daughter, for my father's memory, and for every homeowner who's been bullied by a fake sense of power." The news story went viral. By morning, Dominic's inbox was flooded with emails from other homeowners across Texas, people who'd been fined, harassed, or threatened by HOAs that operated more like cartels than civic groups. He realized then, this wasn't just personal anymore. It was bigger. He was going to war, not just for Pine Hollow, but for every family wronged by those who used bylaws as weapons. The pressure broke in a wave. 3 days after the news report aired, Dominic received a formal letter from the Travis County Commission, RE, Illegal Overlay and Misuse of HOA Authority based on multiple complaints, a pending criminal investigation, and our legal review of your submitted evidence. We are issuing a formal cease and desist order to the Pine Hollow Estates HOA regarding your parcel and any further contact with you or your daughter. You are within your full legal rights to access, modify, and inhabit your property without interference from HOA representatives. We will be pursuing a criminal referral regarding the forgery of county documents and falsified code enforcement violations. Sincerely, Travis County Legal Division. Dominic smiled as he read it. It was vindication. He pinned a copy of the letter to the barn door where anyone snooping around could read it. The war wasn't over, not yet, but the tide had turned. Karen had pushed too far, too arrogantly, too recklessly. And now the county, the press, and the people were watching. Dominic glanced at the field beyond the barn, wildflowers beginning to grow again, unchoked by uniformity. He picked up a shovel. There was work to do. The HOA office had been dark for days, shades drawn, phones going to voicemail. But Karen Malone wasn't done. On a grey Monday morning, Dominic noticed something different. A black SUV idled just outside the property line, just beyond the no trespass signs he'd posted. A man sat inside with mirrored sunglasses and a radio mic clipped to his collar. The SUV bore no official logos, only a small decal. BlackRock Tactical Solutions. Then came another. And another. Within 48 hours, 3 rotating vehicles began doing slow, deliberate loops along the dirt road that curved past his fence line. Dominic approached one, asking who they worked for. The man barely looked at him. "Just here to ensure community safety," he muttered. Dominic didn't buy it for a second. He made some calls. BlackRock Tactical wasn't a licensed law enforcement body. It was a private security contractor, known in Texas for ex-military hires and legally gray surveillance work. Karen had hired mercenaries to intimidate him, legally armed, uniformed, and protected by the thin veil of patrolling for safety. That night, Dominic stood on his porch, Izzy asleep upstairs, a Remington slung loosely over his shoulder. They could watch all they wanted, but they would not cross his line. And if they did, they would meet a man far more prepared than they imagined. Dominic met Alicia Romero at a quiet diner in Austin. She was sharp-eyed, mid-30s, with a calm precision in her speech that suggested courtroom experience and a no-nonsense attitude. She reviewed his documentation, videos, forged forms, emails, and nodded slowly. "This isn't just a dispute," she said. "This is systemic abuse. Pine Hollow Estates HOA isn't just enforcing fake rules. They're engaging in organized fraud." She pulled out her laptop and typed into a legal research database. In the past 2 years, they've acquired, 9 parcels. Each one had overlapping overlay filings, all within a similar format, all underwritten by the same notary who has since moved to Arizona. Dominic leaned forward. "You think they were doing this to flip the land?" Romero nodded. "Exactly. They buy land through manufactured HOA leverage, threaten the owner, drive down the value, then purchase through shell buyers. I'm looking at a family, the Yoders, same zip code. They were driven off with fake environmental violations. Their property's now a private golf club project." Dominic's jaw clenched. "How do we stop it?" Romero smiled grimly. "We file a RICO civil suit. Racketeering, fraud, conspiracy. Not just against Karen, but against every board member and fake buyer tied to those acquisitions." Dominic felt a shift then. The weight of helplessness was cracking. For the first time since returning home, he had a weapon just as powerful as theirs: the law and truth. Within a week, the courtroom filing made headlines. Vasquez v. Pine Hollow, HOA et al. Motion, temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction. Judge Lorraine Beckwith, known for her sharp wit and intolerance for overreach, heard the emergency motion in chambers. Alicia Romero presented footage of BlackRock Tactical circling the Vasquez property, documents of forged signatures, and CPS's documented abuse of anonymous complaints. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "this is not neighborhood squabbling. This is intimidation bordering on paramilitary harassment. My client is a father, a landowner, and a citizen. His rights are not suspended just because someone with money wants to erase his roots." Judge Beckwith looked over her glasses at Karen Malone's defense counsel. "I've seen enough," she said. That afternoon, Dominic received the signed TRO, the Pine Hollow Estates HOA, and any representative agents, including security firms, are hereby prohibited from contacting, surveying, monitoring, or attempting any enforcement actions upon the property of Dominic Vasquez, pending further investigation. Violation of this order will result in criminal contempt and immediate referral to the Travis County Sheriff's Department. BlackRock's vehicles were gone by morning. Dominic and Izzy stood on the porch as the road fell quiet again. "You think they'll leave us alone now?" she asked. He looked into the fields, then toward the old family barn. "No," he said. "But now they know they'll bleed if they come any closer." The email arrived anonymously. No sender name, just a message. "You should see what she's been planning. I can't stay quiet anymore." Attached was a .zip file. Dominic scanned it for malware. Clean. Inside were dozens of emails between Karen Malone and a man named Robert Kessler, a developer from a multinational investment firm. 1. Karen wrote, "Once we flip the remaining properties on the East Tract, we'll be able to rezone the land for Phase 2 expansion." Kessler Holdings gets their retail space, and we can reallocate HOA funds into private stock purchases. I've already secured board votes. Vasquez is the only wild card. Handle him. Another. The fake CPS report didn't work. Security didn't scare him. If he stays, we offer him a buyout and non-disclosure. If he doesn't take it, we push the environmental violation angle. Dominic forwarded the emails to Romero. The next day, she filed a motion to freeze HOA assets and initiate a forensic audit of their finances. But it wasn't just the legal impact that struck Dominic. It was the betrayal. These people weren't misguided. They weren't misinformed. They were deliberate predators, and now the world would see them for what they were. The sun was setting in waves of gold and rust as neighbors trickled onto Dominic's property. Dozens at first, then over 100. Some brought lawn chairs. Others stood. A few had children on their hips. They came because the system had failed them. They stayed because someone finally stood up. Dominic climbed the flatbed trailer, used as a makeshift podium, and faced them. Many of you know me. Some of you remember my father, Carlos Vasquez. He built this barn with his bare hands. He grew food, repaired tractors for free, and taught me to protect what's ours. A hush fell over the crowd. For months I've been harassed, threatened, lied about. Not because I broke the law, but because I refused to bow to people who thought money made them kings. He paused. This land doesn't belong to developers. It doesn't belong to fake boards or signatures on forged paper. It belongs to those who sweat for it, who raise their children on it, who bury their roots deep and don't flinch when the wind turns cold. Applause swelled. I'm not just fighting for my daughter. I'm fighting for yours too. For every family who got a bogus fine. For every veteran who lost their house. For every grandmother threatened with eviction over a garden gnome. Laughter and cheers. Tonight we organize. We file complaints. We sue. We vote. We take back Pine Hollow, inch by inch, until there's nothing left of their lies but dust. The crowd roared. That night, Pine Hollow changed. It stopped being a collection of manipulated homeowners and became a movement.